I'd like to start with Marina O'Connell, talking from the Apricot Centre at Huxham's Cross Farm.
Hello, thank you very much for inviting me. So just to say, we took on Huxham's Cross Farm in 2015. It's a BDLT farm, and then we took it on as a Blairfield site after 40 years of having chemicals thrown at it. And you can see here, we put it down to green manure straight away, and this was the first biodynamic preps that went on. It was great to look back at these old pictures to see how much we've done over the 5 years. So we managed to recondition the soil in 3 years by using these deep rooting green manures, by putting on the biodynamic preparations, and by using something called keyline ploughing to ease the compaction. So we were using a keyline plough across the contour. Clearly, what they were doing is the biodynamic preparations of putting the soil microbial activity back into the soil. We then were feeding that by topping off or grazing off the green manures, and then by keyline ploughing we were allowing the air in and the water out, so allowing that bacteria to proliferate. So we've got this amazing resource I can't really show you on the Zoom, but I've got a biscuit tin full of soil from 5 years ago, and a tin of soil that we have now, and they're like two completely different beings. So if I could have the next slide, please. We planted 3,000 agroforestry trees, so we divided up the main market garden field of the farm. And we planted those across the contour. We also planted 1,000 fruit trees that aren't quite cropping just yet. We produce fruit, vegetables, small-scale grains, and we're growing YQ wheat, which is now fully biodynamic, and we've saved seed for the last 4 years. So that's now beautifully adapted and resilient to our West Country conditions. We've got almost 200 hens, and all of that we sell on Totnes Market, and we have a delivery round within a 20-mile radius. So we are selling everything within our immediate environment. So Gabriel asked me to talk about what happened during COVID and lockdown. So just before we went into lockdown, we experienced a sudden spike in orders. So pre-lockdown, we were delivering somewhere between 50 and 60 vegetable bags a week, and on Totnes Market we were taking somewhere between £600 to £800 a week. So we're probably supplying almost 100 families a week, or maybe a little bit less. Suddenly, just a week before lockdown, Bob and I had what I call a Cobra meeting around our kitchen table. Suddenly, because we had an online shop, so if we could have the next slide, please. Just because we had the, sorry, and then the next slide, please. Because we have an online shop, suddenly we found ourselves with 150 orders in 1 week. So we decided that we could probably manage 150 deliveries a week, and of course at that point the market also shut down. So we basically switched from selling on the market to putting everything into our vegetable bags. Once we'd mastered 150 bags, we opened up the online shop again, and we ended up with 225 deliveries a week. So the way I think of this is that a little bit like in Venice, with the absence of the cruise ships, the dolphins returned into the lagoons and the canals. My feeling was, in the absence of something that I can't quite name, and maybe you could help me put a name to it, that the local food network returned and regrew like mycelium, really, through the community. So what happened is, obviously we're neighbours to Schumacher College, to Sharpham Estate, all of which run residential courses. All of those were shut down, so they had surplus produce. We suddenly didn't have enough produce for 225 customers a week. So we said to our community of growers, we'll take your produce, we'll sell it, and let's make this work together. So we all pulled together and just supplied people we prioritised people who were shielding or who weren't able to get out, and we basically all grouped together to try and deliver good quality, well, excellent quality, healthy, fresh food to people's doors. But also our colleagues within our food community, like the local baker who had to close. So we put his bread on the round. The local Dartington Hall farm with the goat milk, they couldn't deliver their milk anymore, so we put that on our round. So basically it just became a huge community effort to pile everything onto our online shop and get it out to people in lockdown. And basically people loved it. It became like a real lifeline and a bit of excitement for people once a week to get this delicious food delivered to their door. So post lockdown, the numbers have dropped back down to about 150 a week, but the market sales have gone up by more than 50%. So what I think is also happening is not only deliveries, people wanted deliveries, of course, to their door, and so of course they could have gone online and ordered from Tesco's or Waitrose, or and had organic food delivered to their door as well. But what they really wanted to do, I think, was to buy into the health aspect. The fact that the increase in sales are carried on, I think people are really buying into the fact that this food is more healthy for them, and also it's more secure. So food security seemed to be really at the top of people's minds. And also, not just that, but actually just sheer enjoyment, the sheer joy of having this delicious food brought to your door every week. So if we could have the next slide, please. So that's just a picture of some of the contents of our bags that were going out. I think that's the last slide. That's it. So I think that's my 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marina. That's really great. Bryony, your turn.
Greetings, everybody. I'm Bryony, and my work focuses on the biodynamic preparations pretty much 24/7, 365, and I divide my time usually between India and the UK. And this first slide starts is like my year in a way starts here, a few miles from the southernmost tip of India, and I would like to show throughout the presentations just a few ways of how we are meeting the many challenges facing us of our time. And one of the challenges is to do with pressure around the world on the use of the animal sheaths for whatever reason. It could be in our country, of course, BSE has changed the availability. In different countries, there are different pressures on the animal parts. So here we have, this is in the spring in India, and we have Karen Shetty showing a very newly excavated trial material. And in this case, it is a hard-shelled gourd which has been soaked in cow urine and was filled with dung and buried the previous autumn in 2019. So we've been trialing a huge range of materials over the last few years, and the range of materials have ranged from anything from stainless steel containers to the logs of sacred trees, and here of course we've got the hard shelled gourd. Next please, Andre. So this is still the spring of 2020 back in the UK, with my research partner, Chris Stott at Emerson College. And here you can see him transplanting some calendula seedlings into trial plots, each of which will be sprayed with a different alternative to the BD 500. And we chose calendula for being an annual plant so that we could observe the plants basically from seed to seed. And they're regularly monitored, they're regularly sprayed with the alternative sprays, each pot a different spray. And they're regularly monitored and compared using different methods, from the kind of measuring and counting methods, measuring the root growth, measuring the shoot growth, and but also using things like chromatography and Gertian observation on quite an intense scale. So if you look at the inserts on the right of the screen, these are part of the germination trials of the containers, the sheaths that we grew in a similar trial last year. So this is the first generation of the seeds of previous trial materials. And the research is ongoing, and incredibly interesting results, which I won't go into right at this moment. Next, please, Andre. So the insert on this slide is our prep lifting just after lockdown. So all of our prep events we try to turn into community events. So we lifted the compost preparations at Easter this year, and we're trying to maintain a kind of modicum of social distancing in our work, so as not to put the farm at risk. And we have people of special needs on the farm. And so it's all about trying to find ways of continuing our work, but still continuing the work safely and not putting vulnerable people at risk. So these are a few of the horns that we excavated, and it was very, very interesting this year in that we excavated our horns only in July, because until July they were as raw and as fresh as the dung was, as raw and as fresh as the day that they were put in. This is the latest they've ever matured, and I'd be very interested to hear other people's experiences on this subject, and perhaps some thinking as to why this could have happened this year. Next, please, Andre. So this is kind of continuing our learning during the lockdown restrictions, and we're having an astronomy lesson in the out in the field. And the turkeys, as you can see, are not so good at social distancing. And in the left of the frame, you can see some buckets and things ready, because after the astronomy lesson, we're going to stir and apply some CPP over the field where the turkeys are to improve the soil, but also to counteract the pathogens that might build up with a lot of animals in the picture. And we're finding CPP to be very useful, and we're even putting it into livestock water to increase as like a probiotic. Next, please, Andre. So not only did we have the obvious challenges of COVID this year, but also there were challenges with the weather. And there was also one of the opportunities of COVID, which people have mentioned, is that there's a tremendous appetite to reconnect with nature. So we held several spraying events that people from the community could join us and stir the CPP and apply the CPP on our drought-stressed fields. The insert in the upper left is a group of us that meets regularly, and we do some work to contact and nourish the elementals, and which we can also do as a group activity. And the insert on the right is we managed to have our prep making also as a community event this year. So this is our most recent prep making with the horn manure, and we had a fantastic afternoon that was also socially distanced, but that wouldn't stop the work. So it's all about finding creativity of joining people together so that the work can continue. So I think that's more than my time's up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bryony. It's fantastic to hear the work continuing in spite of everything else, and how you're working with the preparations. And we look forward to some reporting as soon as you're able to give us some reports on your experiences and experimentation.
Yes, I'd love to do that.
Great. So the next thing is a little garden video from the fantastic work that Linda, Jess and Claire Hattersley did with Walida and Wisdom TV. And Linda mentioned these 5 videos earlier, and now we're going to see the 5th one.
As a biodynamic gardener, one of the things I'm always aiming to do is develop a deep and meaningful relationship with my garden. I'm the one who makes all the decisions, but if I strive to tune into the needs of the plants, the soil and the garden as a whole, then I'll be able to work in a much more harmonious way. I'm always mindful about what my garden needs to stay healthy and resilient, looking after the life in the soil, tuning into nature's rhythms when sowing and planting, and making the best possible compost that I can, so that I can give back to the soil what I've taken out as food. There's always room, even in the smallest garden, to create the homes and habitats that will encourage lots of biodiversity into the garden. If you aim to draw in as much insect life into your garden, including bees, butterflies and dragonflies, then the birds and small mammals will soon follow. The best thing any gardener can do to attract wildlife into their garden is to build a pond, however small. Try not to be over tidy. The scruffy patch of grass and weeds behind the shed is where the insect life will be hanging out. Plant lots of bee and butterfly friendly plants. Pile up logs into habitat piles for frogs and other small creatures. Plant a tree or 2, even small trees will give the birds a perch, and the tree roots will encourage the beneficial fungi to colonise your soil, supporting everything else that you want to grow. Try to love your weeds. The compost preparation plants, which include dandelion, nettle, yarrow, valerian and chamomile, are all healing herbs in their own right, but are also very generous to wildlife. For example, dandelions are a great companion plant as their long tap roots bring up nutrients deep down in the soil and share them with neighbouring shallower rooted plants. Nettles are an important food source for some butterfly species, and they're activators in the compost heap, and they make a great plant food too. Using a planting calendar can help you to become aware of the bigger picture and become much more aware of the consequences of unthinking action. Is the reason all those seeds didn't germinate because there was an eclipse? Are those tomatoes the best I've ever grown because I always hoed them on a fruit day? You and your garden can develop a very personal relationship with the help of biodynamics. And of course, stirring either the horn manure or horn silica is an hour-long meditation. I always send positive thoughts of love, harmony and respect into the water when I'm stirring, and definitely avoid thinking about what I'm having for my tea. Take time to cultivate an inner gratitude for the beauty of your garden, the nourishment of the food that you've grown, for all the sun, rain and time it takes for your garden to grow your food. The relationship of the gardener to their garden is unique and to be valued. Why do we all feel so much better when we're outdoors in nature? This feel-good factor comes from the bonding hormone oxytocin, which is released when we look at something with appreciation and love. This is what happens to us when we get that feeling of being connected to something deeper and bigger than ourselves, when we're connected to the healing power of nature. So I've practiced this mindful but practical approach to gardening for over 20 years, and I do feel it's a great way to feel true connection to your garden. And I've often had a sense of a tap on the shoulder or a little nudge from the plants or the garden, as though I've missed something, or they're just reminding me to pay attention in certain ways. And I think developing this close relationship to a garden is something that Biodynamics can really help you with.
So that's the fifth, and the other four are equally available on YouTube. And really, Claire has done a fantastic job there. So we thank her particularly, but also the team who worked with her, as mentioned before. So now we are going to move on to Hans Gunther, who is going to talk about his connection and his work and encouraging gardening.
For some reason, we're getting a background interference, but it's gone now.
Yep.
Really delighted and grateful to be on here with you all, and welcome to the Biodynamic Association AGM. I really love being here in this amazing community. And if you put the next slide on, please. I want to really talk about stirring for biodynamics from a spiritual, cultural, social, political, and economic background, as well as the practice of it. My background is, if you look on the top right, is my forefathers are Hungarian. They lost their land, and I've always been feeling very passionate for people who don't have land or don't own land, and we know that most of the land is in the hand of a few, and so is food production. But most of the food is grown by small farmers and gardeners. So on the left-hand side, you see actually the Chiapanecans from Mexico and Southeast Mexico, where I worked for 3 years, claiming back 2 million hectares of land, of the indigenous land that had been stolen by the government in the 50s and given to big landowners to grow beef and other food sources for America, for United States, that is. And I worked there for 3 years with the Revolutionary Party and been very influenced to see how we can claim back our rights to the land and use biodynamics to empower the land and the health of people. So I've been involved most of my life through the help of Emerson College, and I put Francis Edmonds as the founder and honoring his wife, and also through his impulse of encouraging community-supported agriculture, which is at the bottom of my heart, which was brought to America, to the United States, by Robin van En, whose project I advised for 8 years while I was working still at Emerson College and in Marco Hall doing school gardening research and so on in the early 90s. So then I moved to the States and run a couple of projects Sunways Farm, Holcomb Farm, as a community project to empower people who were hungry and malnourished in the inner city communities. And that's at my heart, really. I trained as a rural development worker, and that was always at the bottom of my heart from my history of my parents and forefathers. But I really start focusing more and more on the cities and the connection we can make between the green belt of cities and the inner cities. Next, please. So putting this a bit into a historical context also, and putting some figures, it's very interesting to see that we as Northerners or Central Europeans are so reliant on food imports. And of course, we make an exception in Biodynamics. We grow locally, and though having worked in Spain for 8 years, consulting and teaching biodynamics and creating or co-creating, helping 4 groups in different regions of Spain to grow as biodynamic producers and also backyard gardeners, etc. You see here a photo of Almeria, which is 135 square miles. It's a third of the size of London, just under plastic. And 100,000 Moroccans and African slave workers are there under abysmal conditions growing food for the majority of the people. We need to get this sort of information out there as part of our mission to grow local, seasonal, and socially and ethically responsible food for the environment and for the people. I've lived next to the motorway. I've seen 8,000 truck drivers driving up and down the motorway into Northern Europe, into England. It's one train of trucks coming to Europe. We had the crisis in Valencia and Alicante and all over Spain in the coastal areas in 2009. And I see, and I'm talking about this because I see this happening right now with Brexit and with COVID, that we're going to see a huge crisis. And as I was showing my parents and my grandparents losing their land, there have been huge migrations happening in the past, which I see in the near future because of the upheavals we see, not just through war in the Middle East, but also in our own countries, out from the cities to the land. How do we repopulate the land with people in a healthy fashion and reclaim the right to the land, just like the people in Chiapas, the Zapatistas did there? And I've seen in many abandoned villages in Spain. So next one, please. So I've been working in Spain, as I said, for 8 years, 3 years before in Mexico, helping people here. You see on the bottom left a photo of a land that was put aside in the green belt of Valencia to be developed in what was the super city of Valencia, with thousands and thousands of buildings and commercial centers. This was supposed to become a commercial center. It was owned by the banks and by the developers. We occupied it. And any way I could find to teach people and socially, politically, and economically support people in the rural areas and in the cities at the time of the crisis in Spain, we had the opportunity to work with the parties that were the green parties. There were 5 parties actually there, because nobody could get their heads under one umbrella in Spain, it seems. Much individualism like we see in the cities nowadays here. I run plenty of courses there over the years. And what was the most important part is to bring people together with the gardens, and you see the groups of people working there, reclaiming the land, and to the press, going out into the public and making this public. That's really where we have to go nowadays. And it enhanced greatly the livelihood of people. We ended up with dozens of organic garden projects around the city of Valencia, and also in Alicante 3 years later, where I had garden projects, one of my own, and teaching a lot of gardening, and then also encouraging others the same. Next. So we're very blessed that on a political level in England, we have a huge progressive attitude nowadays, and more of that earlier already, that even in the City of London, a food strategy plan was released and signed by the Mayor of London, Khan, and with 5 main issues: the good food at home, reducing food insecurity. We talk also about food deserts. As I said, in Spain, and also in Hartford, Connecticut, where I work, people couldn't afford to buy food, nor was it available in the inner cities. It's a huge issue in London, which we will. Good food economy, shopping and eating out. People have all the opportunity to eat healthy food and good food where they go and have access to it. So right to the access of healthy food. Good food for pregnancy and childhood. So we have to rebuild the strength and health and resilience of our young population and the mothers who give birth to these wonderful children who are obliterated with bad nutrition. Good food in community settings and public institutions. We see that the places where people are supposed to heal, they die because, you know, I was in a night of lockdown with a TIA in the hospital. The food they were serving, I was on the day fast. I couldn't even touch the food. The water is poisoned. You can't get even fresh food in the hospitals. We've got to get good food into the community settings of hospitals, institutions of the elderly, et cetera, and schools. Just heard in the States, school kids in prisons get the same food, which is grade D meat, which is actually just starting to rot. And I think the same probably is happening here in England because of the government's lack of funding. It's a disaster. If you start looking down the rabbit hole, then you realize that biodynamics, we need to be out there socially, politically active, and not just through education and training. Good food growing community gardens and urban farming. You see that here in London, we have 38% of the children who are now by the age of 10 obese. We have a huge health crisis. We have allergies. I work for an allergy app here that's reaching thousands and thousands of people in UK. We're going to reach millions all over the world. We need to teach people to change the diet. These children are living under stress, which enhances obesity. They're living under malnutrition. They're not getting their food they need. There are 2.3 million Londoners who live below the poverty line. 33% of the adults are skipping their meals to share it with their children. This is crime. This is genocide. This is genocide by a government who believes to help us to get better. Next, we're looking at the same time now at the positive outcome of all this, because if the government can't take care of us, just like in Mexico, the landless people took care of it. They claimed the land back. They claimed their power back. They educated themselves. They have people coming in who are teachers and trainers. And so we need to do in London. We have lots of wonderful organized garden projects already, 2,700 of them, excuse me. And we have 200,000 Londoners involved in growing food. Please, next. These groups are the ones that we need to address more with biodynamics and help to heal the soils, because they grow organically with permaculture, etc. They don't know how polluted the soils are. What are the benefits of all these activities? Well, we know that fresh air, sunshine, exercise, and fresh organic food boosts the immune system. Intergenerational community building, to share the skills that elders have that have been locked away in institutions, instead of sharing their skills and becoming mentors to the younger generation in the garden situations and celebrating life and the seasons again in the gardens. Lowers the violence. It's been proven if you have a garden set up, and particularly if you have small animals, it lowers the violence and vandalism and creates a social bonding and sense of ownership of people in the cities. We can encourage that. We need to go into the cities and become more active with the small allotments and small people, small growers that are empowered with growing their own food again. Best occupation for mental health issues used in social prescribing by doctors. I met and I've been meeting people working in integrative medicine who are more and more into prescribing actually gardening, meditation, and other more communal activities to help people to get out of their dire straits of mental illness. Next, please. So what's the challenge in the city? We have immediate threats, which is air pollution and the nanoparticles, which are the emissions from combustion engines, which are partly supposedly responsible for respiratory conditions that are so obliterating us during the winter and the flu season. We have cyanide and hydrocarbons, sulfur dioxide, CO, and CO2. Again, we're suffocating in the city. So what can we do in the gardens to diversify the environment, as we've seen and heard before? And then wonderful apricot center, planting all these trees. Richard Saltmark Baker in the 90s already announced that we are suffocating in the cities, that we have 4 or 5% less oxygen in the cities than we had before in the nature. It's down even to 15% probably in the cities. People can't think straight and can't function because they lack oxygen and are dealing with contaminants. Long-term threats are the heavy metals and toxins like arsenic in the soil. We have proof that these challenges can be enhanced by bringing organic matter in. The horn silica preparation and silica in small quantity as a bioavailable form of nutrient for the plant can enhance the lockdown and also the lockdown of heavy metals and poisons in the soil, and can enhance the drawdown of carbon dioxide, enhancing the situation of the global climate change. Next, please. So how does the biodynamic approach remediate these conditions? So silica, I mentioned already, I've jumped the gun here, building biodynamic compost to lower the incidence of toxicity, building humus in the most enriching way for the microbiome and for the mycelia in the soil. That's also been proven that the biodynamic compost can hugely heal the soil in that respect. We work with the constellations and the rhythms. If anybody noticed, and we heard a few people talk about communal activities, as soon as we are aligning ourselves, eating the same food from a healthy soil biome, and eating together, socially coming together, and then working together with the rhythms of the planets and the moon, etc., we're coming into a cohesion and a coherence of activity that's rhythmic as a community again, builds community, and builds also a social understanding again that we've been split apart with modern fear-mongering and all other things that are going on right now. By planting a diversified environment with trees, shrubs, and other perennials, evergreens, we can filter the air, as I've mentioned before. And last bit, please. So what are the opportunities? We have challenges, the lack of resources. So in the cities, we know that 50% of all food waste and 50% of all food grown and delivered to the cities ends up in waste disposal. And we have now waste collection with green manure, green waste and so on. But I would say we have to really make sure that this waste is composted locally and then creates a indigenous or autochthonous fertility in the area where we're growing and create true self-sufficiency with the biodynamic methods. The isolation and loneliness of people, we've addressed already the mental issues of people, and suicide rates have jumped by 400% since the lockdown. We need to get people together out in the fresh sun, in the fresh air, have exercise and healthy food production happening in the environment that is our natural right to be in. Next, please. And so we have to overcome the greatest challenge that we are obviously experiencing right now and have been experiencing with social media and people more and more looking down the funnel of their screens. Segregation, generations of cultural wisdom and knowledge can be shared in the garden, and people of all classes, colors, beliefs, and work and freely side by side. I've worked in many projects where we brought people together, from the refugees, from halfway house people, to street kids, to orphans, to the richest millionaires and middle-class people. We need to find a common ground again on the land, and that's what I'm teaching in my online course, and I will be teaching again outside in the different projects that we're going to base our teaching in. What is the challenge of competition? Well, if we compete for the same things, we don't really allow individuality to develop. And as we know, the garden and the farm needs to be an individuality, and the people who run that also create an individual community strengthened by each individual in that community. So we need land trusts, community trusts, society that can reclaim the land and rebuy and re-empower the land and themselves by reclaiming the land and creating these communities. And that will create an open-heartedness approach to life and prosperity again. So that's my contribution. That's what I'm teaching. Since lockdown, we had a trebling of the class application that I'm teaching. We have now 70 people on the online course. This is going to reach 1 million people if we really think big. Thank you very much for your time, and hope this is inspirational and it will stir up the waters a bit.
Thanks, Hans. It's great, but we do need to keep moving. So thank you for all of that content. And we're going to have to go a bit over our time to be able to get all the rest of the presentations. So can the people who are presenting next please really keep to their time so that we can finish before 1 o'clock so people can have a proper lunch break. So the next person is Peter Brink, please.
Thank you, Gabriel. Yes, good morning. Well, just building on Hans, because what Hans needs, of course, are the seeds for all the crops, and that's what we all need. Yeah, and that is, so 90% really of our food crops come from seeds. The seed impulse, the seed initiative in this country has existed for quite a long time, starting off with Hans Steenbergen up in Botten Village about 30 years ago. And the first seed catalog came about 25 years ago. Then we were in a situation where we felt things needed to expand, and that's where the seed idea of the seed cooperative came in. So in 2016, a group of us managed to purchase a bit of 24 acres up in Lincolnshire near Spalding on grade 1 fertile land, slightly heavy land, mind you, but fertile. With it came 1 hectare of glass houses. And so this was a way of continuing the work that Hans Steenbergen had done up in Stormy Hall Seeds in Botten Village in Yorkshire. We have new personnel, of course. Hans Steenbergen is now in a more advisory capacity, and we have new personnel in Gosperton, which is Gosperton is the name of the village nearby. So we call sometimes the seed cooperative also Gosperton. So it is all about open pollinated seeds, of course. Open pollinated are the seeds that we can regenerate from generation to generation, and that will breed true to type, given good selection. And so in 2015, a couple called Kate Ayres and David Price joined our team and really somehow took it on and have been building up the seed cooperative up in Lincolnshire since about February 2016. There are 5 aspects, you could say, to the seed cooperative. Thank you, Andre, for bringing up the pictures there. There you see some borage on the left and you see some beans on the right. Maybe just show the next picture as well. Thank you. Thanks, Andre. That's great. So what it is to do with this, it's about growing seeds here in the UK for the UK climate and for UK soils. And that's what the seed cooperative is also about. It's about producing on site. And this year we've grown between 20 and 30 different varieties of vegetables and flowers. And together with that, there is a network of growers of about 15 this year who lived in different parts of the country, so exposed to different climates. So that's also what makes the diversity, you can say, and the outsourcing of seed growing important, really. The thing is that in our time, there are so few people saving seed because it's all taken on by large seed corporations. And really what is bred today are F1 hybrids that are non-reproducible, and therefore, in a certain sense, going into the future, and which is looking more to be a bit of an uncertain future. We do need to engage growers, farmers, to become interested in saving seeds and in saving open pollinated varieties. So up at Gosperton, they have a staff of about 8 full-time and part-time people, and also what we have a group of directors, 3 directors at the moment, and just a newly co-opted director, which is linked on to the Biodynamic Association. Part of what has really made it possible for us to purchase the Seed Corp has been shareholders. So it's really been through the shareholders that we've managed to purchase and to take out loans to make it all possible. Because there was no fund from the beginning. We had to go out and fundraise, and really we are very grateful to all the members who have bought shares in the Seed Cooperative, and without them this year would just not have been possible. Another aspect really to the Seed Cooperative, or maybe I can just say really in this connection also, that it is part of what we do is that we hold open days. So last year we had 3 open days. This year, because of the circumstances of the difficulties with COVID, we had to not to have any open days, and it has even meant that the board of directors have not been able to meet physically up in Gosperton like we normally do. So that's been an unfortunate situation. So everything as we are doing now is happening through a Zoom or Skype. Another thing that we are engaged with really at the Seed Corp is plant breeding. And plant breeding is, we have been working on a blight-free tomato over the last years. And so this work continues. And so in the future, we hope to take on more varieties, but it's been a very big ask to convert the 24 acres and all the work really that we took on to convert that into a viable situation now. As Julia said earlier on, seed sales had increased enormously through the COVID lockdown and through these 6 months. And yeah, so this has been a tremendous boost financially for us as well. Perhaps lastly, I should just say that one of the 5 aims is also, yes, is education. I did just briefly point out that we have the 15 seed growers. It is in our remit really to bring out education so that we can train up a new seed growers, and that we can keep informing ourselves about how to grow seeds from all sorts of different vegetables and herbs and flowers. So the education aspect is also very important. We have now gone into a fundraising situation where we are refurbishing a barn into seed where we pack and store seeds, because all that has been taking place in the house, and that needed to somehow come out of the house and into a more neutral space. So we've been fundraising £80,000, and we're still in the process of fundraising. But in a certain sense, we are on to the next stage of development, really, for the Seed Corp with this work. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Peter. That's great. So please remember, if you've got a few pennies, buy some shares in the Seed Cooperative to help them along.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Charles, it's over to you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me on. I won't be long. I found Biodynamics through Chateau Montu, which some of you may remember, in 2007. And it struck a chord with me. I've gardened most of my life since I was about 3, so that's 59 years ago. And having sort of seen Monty's program, I then discovered a book called From Sky to the Earth by Nicholas Joly, who's one of the leading biodynamic wine growers. And that really did sort of bring home the importance of looking after the soil. I was then lucky enough 2 years ago to go to Glasgow and did a biodynamic gardening course. And during that, I was talking to some of the people on the course about where you could buy biodynamic or Demeter certified products. And this proved quite difficult. No one really knew. And I went into our local organic shop and asked if they had any Demeter products. And their response was, oh, I think that brand went bust years ago. They thought it was a sort of Clear Spring or a Biona. So they just didn't know the message. I ran a business online, nothing to do with food or wine. And so I thought, well, this could be easy. We'll set up a store online and I'll source biodynamic Demeter certified products. So I went through the certification process, and we are Demeter certified, and I'd like to thank Richard for all his help with that. And then I started trying to source products. So the first company I found was in Portugal called Aromáticas de Palma, and they do herbs. So they're nicely packaged. Don't know if you can see it, but so we sourced those and they've arrived and we've added them to the website. They then introduced me to an olive oil producer in Portugal called Olival de Risca. So again, they're they're 2 Swiss families who moved to Portugal. They're Demeter certified. Everything we sell is Demeter certified. So we ordered in their olive oil. They then mentioned that they knew somebody doing vinegar in Italy, a company called Gazzoni. So we got in touch with them and so on. Then in Spain, we discovered some olive oils, and I soon realized, I think in this whole journey of finding projects, that it wasn't just that they were Demeter certified biodynamically grown, they're also winning awards. So Cortijo del Puerto for olive oil, sorry, my pronunciation is pretty poor. They've won loads of gold medals at olive oil world championships and things like that. So we've built this up. We've sourced us a range of products. We've now added wines, and the whole purpose is really to create that connection between the consumer and the producer, which I think gets very lost. So if you do go on our website, we've got tabs on each product page which will have information about the producers. We're hoping to expand that. I'm going to get more photographs, I hope, as we can gather them, and add images, so that you really do get that connection between these guys who are producing the food, Demeter certified, biodynamic grown, passionate about the soil. The thing you get from all of them the whole time is that biodynamic agriculture is respecting nature at the highest level. This is the message they put across the whole time. Of course, they run into the problem of, why, the question people always ask about all organic biodynamic products, why is it so expensive? That isn't really the question. It's actually, why is mass-produced food so cheap? And if we could get that message across, we'd do really well. We know why it is. Governments over the centuries have wanted to feed the population to keep us all happy. And so they want food produced as cheaply as possible, so they can keep wages as low as possible. I won't get into a political argument about that, but it is a fact. And we need to address that. When you look at the vineyards and the ones who put up pictures of showing the vineyards when they've been having nitrogen thrown on them, and then the transformation once they move to following biodynamic methods is quite extraordinary. And some of them are very big companies. This isn't all, I thought when I started on this journey, I thought, there'll be just little small farms. I had no idea of the scale of some of them. So Gérard Bertrand in the south of France, who produces biodynamic Demeter certified, most of his wines are Demeter certified. I think one of his plots is in conversion at the moment. He's turning over $125 million. He's employing hundreds of people over the years. So these are quite big companies. In Italy, there's a pasta company called, I forget their name, sorry, they've just bought anyway, a Demeter certified pasta called L'Origine, which I'm hoping to get in. My problem there is that the minimum order is 1,000 kilos, which I think my wife will throw me out if I fill the house with even more products. So that's what we're doing. That's what we're trying to do, is just promote that connection. My sister's helping me, Kate. We're using Instagram and Facebook. And I would urge all of you, please do follow the producers on Facebook and Instagram. They're pretty active. Marco at Palazzo Tronconi, who I think Jez knows. I bought along a bottle of his wine. He's very, very active on social media. And I think that way, as we spread it, I watch our Facebook figures, and we are reaching a lot of people. So that's what we're trying to do, just get this simple message across that buying biodynamic products is good for you and good for the planet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charles. That's great. Lovely. Now, Nina.
Thanks, Charles. And nice to see you face to face. We've had quite a few chats over the last few months. So yeah, following on very much from what Charles just explained on how difficult it is to actually access biodynamic food here in the UK, and the complexity of that system and how it works. Next slide, please, Andre. So I was just wondering if a lot of people actually knew the exact definition of a local food system or how it is recognized. So I did a little digging, and the European Agricultural Fund see it as a supply chain involving a limited number of operators committed to cooperation, economic development, and importantly, close geographical and social relations between those producers, processors, and consumers. So next slide, please, Andre. The current situation here in the UK, what we're facing in terms of production, there's limited and scattered pockets of production across the UK. So unless you are living in an area which is close to a producer where you can have access, it's pretty limited. And you have to go either online directly to some of the importers or a specialty store, such as the Biodynamic store. And then often that is only having access to an already processed Demeter product, not fresh necessarily, or even processed in the form of bread. And that, of course, all connects directly back to demand. So most producers can't provide enough for their locality, but there's not enough national demand to actually increase conversion of land and getting farmers on board with the idea. So it's a real chicken and egg situation. And this is where also in my role, it gets quite tricky. Next slide, please. So looking at the situation in that, the initiatives that I'm looking to develop and that I think we all, as part of this movement, need to start doing is looking beyond only biodynamic. We have to reach out and connect to organic, regenerative agricultural movements, and any of the one, as I mentioned previously, any of the others that sort of connect into that. Not necessarily saying that regenerative agriculturally produced products are as good as biodynamic, but rather embracing that the people involved in those movements share the same ideals, are open to discussion about biodynamics, and so would become really good potential future biodynamic farmers if we converse with them and connect with them and engage with them. Furthermore, our licensees who have shown some initiatives to help spread the word about biodynamics are, again, Pharmacy, as I mentioned, with their app initiative. ClearSpring, Chris Dawson, who owns ClearSpring, has had a few calls with us and connected up with a few of the licensees to see if he can't create more Demeter certified products to add to his line, because he's a big supporter of the movement and really wants to do everything he can to help spread the word. I'll also be working with them to get a dedicated biodynamic page up on their website and looking at how we can activate things more. We had some plans and then COVID happened for in-store activations, but we are readjusting that. And then, of course, supporting Charles and other people with initiatives like that who are helping to bring more Demeter products to us, even if it is imported Demeter products. The fact is, if more people use them and demand them, we'll get there. And I love this quote of the rising tide lifts all boats. And that's where this idea that we connect with other groups that have similar ideals. If regen ag and organic get even more popular, then we by default will also, and vice versa. It's about seeing us as a wider community and not just a bubble. Next slide, please. So on that note, the directory I mentioned earlier, I just did a quick little screen video to show what this directory looks like now. Just to give you an idea, but please do also go have a look at the website itself. As you can see, it lays it out very clearly. There's a way to filter what you're looking for. And it has both organic and biodynamic producers on there, but they are labeled accordingly. So it's not just producers, it's processors, traders. So as a consumer, this is where you want to go to find out where you can access all of these products. This is an ongoing project. I'm constantly adding elements to it, but there's also very handily a map view, which we know from the inquiries we've received is something that people really want. And there's Trump, ignore him. Okay, so more importantly, what can we do? As members of the BDA, as people involved in the movement, I decided to focus on 4 areas. So demand more. If we use initiatives or box schemes that are already organic, so take Abel and Cole, for example, who may have 1 or 2 products available that are biodynamic, by actually contacting them and demanding that they say increase their line, it then makes it a lot easier for someone, for me, to continue the discussions and actually connect them with more producers. I use Abel and Cole as an example because they stock Nancliffe Farm eggs, and to great rave reviews. They sell out constantly, and they were thinking about perhaps stocking some more biodynamic products. But unless there's demand from consumers, they're not likely to make that effort. So that's the demand option. Support more. The more products we buy that are biodynamic, the more products there will be. It's that same cycle. So use the directory, maybe find out if there were some producers around that you didn't even know about before, because now it's easy to sort of spot them. A lot of them do offer online deliveries as well. Getting involved. So as you may have seen on the chat earlier, I posted a link to a web form where you could register your interest for the prep discussions, but there were also other options on there. So one of the things I'm trying to do, and I've just launched this today, that page, would be to collect as many details of people who are willing to give input and, to give inputs or give us feedback, or when we want to activate any of the citizens to say, please test something out for us, etc. So registering interest there to become a kind of ambassador. And then lastly, spreading the word. As Charles mentioned as well, using social media as much as possible, reposting any good information about biodynamics, asking friends or family to get involved and join in, or taking an initiative to a local school or a local group. That would be the best way to help spread the word. And I think, oh, next slide, please, Andre. Sorry. Oh, no, you've got, there we go. So also, I've just quickly left my details here. If anyone has any ideas or thoughts they'd like to share or want to get involved in any way, please do make use of the web form or email me directly.
Thank you, Nina. That's really great. And now we've got a very quick presentation from Alison, followed by a quick one from Bernie, and hopefully we'll then break for lunch. So I'll leave a slide up about the Land Trust just so people know.
So Andre, if you could put the next slide on. Thank you. This is my only slide, so we don't have to worry. I introduced myself earlier. I also work with the Biodynamic Agricultural College, one of the sister organizations of the Biodynamic Association. On the theme of building back better, we recognize, and actually there was a biodynamic movement-wide meeting not long ago where we really looked at all of the ways that you can learn about biodynamics in the UK. And there's actually a lot that is going on. A lot of it you've heard about already, like the Biodynamic Gardening Club, like Hans Günther's online sessions. There's also work-based learning, which is like an apprentice training. There are things at Ruskin Mill where you can learn how to grow a garden in the first place. And by the way, you're doing it biodynamically. So there's plenty that's going on. One of the things we experienced during lockdown was that we had been running just an introduction course, Introduction to Biodynamics. And we had, you know, sort of 10, 12, 15 to 20, 25 people. And suddenly people were really awake and really interested in where their food came from. You've heard this before from other perspectives, but the same was true in education, that people were really attentive and really looking for community. And community during COVID-19 was really hard to find, but our online courses were one of the ways that people could really connect. And that was people connecting from all over the world. We had people in Italy in the middle of lockdown where they couldn't leave their houses, but they could at least talk to students who were in California and the UK, and all thinking about biodynamics and how to do better with this planet that we have. So we tried really, and it's one of the things that I think education really needs to take responsibility for, is to provide optimism and hope and the capacity to do something positive. Those are always our focus. But the other thing which I think is important to point out, and this is true in education in general, but especially in education in biodynamics, that this is an investment for the future. Every time you talk to somebody about, wouldn't this be a good thing to do, even if it's in your garden or with your life, becoming a professional grower or a professional farmer, that's an investment potential for the future. And we need it now, because we need farmers and growers for the future so badly. We need them already, but we need them even more for the future. So that's just kind of a brief insight into what happened in education during lockdown, and how this consciousness is really changing and really different, and people are really attentive in a much more positive way towards the future. This lockdown seems to have tipped people into doing things that they have meant to do, but have always been too busy. So a lot of people are now starting gardens, starting farms, because they've been meaning to do that for ages and never had the time to really think about it. Now is the time. So anytime any of you get to talk to people about biodynamics, please encourage them to get involved in whatever shape or form, because we need them.
Thank you, Alison. Absolutely. We need farmers and growers, professionals and people who do it at home and for pleasure. But the professional ones, particularly because we're advertising jobs regularly on the Biodynamic Association website that are not getting filled or not being filled by the people who really know about biodynamics. So encourage people to not only take up farming and gardening, but biodynamically. There are jobs out there. Bernie, over to you.
Lovely. Thank you very much for asking me to present today. It's lovely to be here with everybody. So good afternoon. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Bernie Courts. I'm one of the core team of the Ruskin Mill Biodynamic Training, which is known as Growing the Land, Growing People. And it's actually led by Peter Van Vliet, who of course many of you will know. I just wanted to do a little bit of very poignant history here. So nearly 30 years ago, it was Till van der Voort who initiated the original Seven Vale Biodynamic Training. And over the years, I can recall that many of my colleagues have been trained by Till, either at Oaklands Park or up in Darlington, where he established Clervaux College for Ruskin Mill. And Till was able to see and practice a capacity for biodynamic agriculture to help develop new abilities and possibilities for those who are marginalised or undervalued in society. So it's true to say, I think that none of these BD trainings would have existed or possibly been in the form that they are in if it was not for the driving force that was Till. And this is just one factor of the great legacy that he leaves behind in biodynamic practice and training. So just thought it would be necessary just to recount his influence here. So a farming colleague just the other day said to me that in this time of COVID, coronavirus, we should do our best to protect the unhealthy and the vulnerable. And in a way, this is the gesture of the biodynamic training at Ruskin Mill Trust, growing the land, growing people. There's a correlation between how the earth is now so vulnerable to the ecological calamities caused by humankind, and actually another emergent pandemic of young people with mental health issues, social difficulties, learning differences, and other neurodiversities that doesn't go unnoticed. So this Malcolm Gardner kind of translation from the agriculture course of the strapline, the spiritual renewal of agriculture is actually a very poignant guide in what we're doing or trying to achieve on this training in growing the land, growing the people. There's a strong objective to train those who want to heal the earth and to strengthen the value of human work on the land for the benefit of all. Healing the earth to heal people. And this, in a way, is spiritual renewal of agriculture in the context of biodynamic training. We have good news. We have a level 3 accreditation about to be confirmed for this training. And we're offering, yet another diverse apprenticeship model with training available at all our schools and colleges across England and Wales. So the bulk of the learning happens in the field alongside seasoned biodynamic practitioners who guide trainees and teach the practicalities of biodynamic agriculture. And each centre explores its own spirit of place, or what we call genius loci, or the genius of the place. And the trainees are schooled in phenomenological observation based on Goetheanistic practice, so that a place becomes an experience of its individuality and a consequence of how that leads to the possibility of a farm organism. And so from this vantage point of genius loci, the phenomena and processes of soils, plants, composts, nature's rhythms and forces, animals, ecology, nutrition are all perceived and received by the trainees. Practice, theory and research all informing and enhancing one another. It's hands, head and heart, it's thinking, feeling, willing. And it's important to say that it is hard work, where often the initial experience of physical work takes the new initiate by surprise. However, the energies and synergies of place, people, purpose, plus the often extraordinary new ways of viewing the work of agriculture help trainees to get through this early stage. And the journey is one of personal development, where the outcomes of your work are of value to the community, and when reflected upon, can become a value to self, to the ego and the self-development of the trainee. Assessment happens through the build-up of a broad portfolio of reflective practice and experience. And this does require discipline to achieve, and it's one of the most challenging aspects of the course. And often our learners who are kinesthetic learners, who like to learn through moving and doing, as you'd expect on a practical training, they find that the writing of evidence is not often their chosen option. Nonetheless, I recently have seen some remarkable written reflections, which I feel could be used later as an experiential-based guide to the workings of biodynamic agriculture. Could I have the next slide, please? Oh no, that is the next slide. So this symbiosis of biodynamic agriculture, the trainees study human development as a result of working with young adults with learning difficulties. And in Ruskin Mill, in all the holdings, the biodynamic environment and the biodynamic thinking permeates the craft workshops, the kitchens, and the residential provision. It's biodynamics in a kind of greater holistic kind of sense, in a way. So the opportunities to observe how work on the land with purpose and with an ecological outlook can reduce anxiety, elevate a depressive position, rein in hyperactivity, unlock fixed thinking, create new connections, facilitate social skills, promote a sense of belonging is all possible when working alongside our neurodiverse student population. And from this, we are able to study, the threefold human being containing the fourfold. We relate this directly to the farm organism, to our work with preparations, to our understanding of animal physiology, to food and nutrition. We go deeply into Steiner's 12 senses as a human development model, and yeah, so on, all moving towards our care of soil, plants, animals, and people. And most importantly, we are inclusive in our work and our planning of learning. So the slide on the right shows a biodynamic exchange for the Lautenbach community in the Black Forest. And in this workshop, we're creating a birch barrel pit with following Pfeiffer's instructions with Roland Ulrich, who many of you will know as a master biodynamic compost maker.
Bernie, we're going to have to round up, I'm afraid.
That's not my last sentence, Gabriel. So this is an inclusive process: BD farmers, growers, BD apprentices, and Ruskin Mill students. Yeah, so I hope that gives you a little bit of an overview of what we're up to. And it's rewarding hard work that challenges participants and helps to create new BD farmers and growers for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bernie. And I'm sorry to everyone that I've hurried you along. We've tried to put a lot into this morning, and yeah, it always has a human factor that doesn't quite fit the clock. But this is just a slide a little bit about the Biodynamic Land Trust, just because there's lots of opportunities coming up there. So I won't talk to it. If people are looking for land and looking for opportunities to grow and to farm, please do be in touch with us. And we're going to move across the questions because people have been using questions in the chat room, and that's fantastic. So we don't need to have a question time, and we don't have time for it. People need their lunch. So Andre, if you can put the lunch slide up, and then people who want to can chat.